Hey guys, welcome back to Talk That Talk, brought to you by CEG Central Entertainment Group. I'm your host, Anthony Yepes, alongside Ali Rubenstein. And this week we have Mordecai Holtz, the social media strategist for Ericsson. If you don't know who Ericsson is, please look it up. It is a humongous tech company, and Mordecai is the man behind the sticks as it relates to social. We are so excited to have you on the show today, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Anthony and Ali. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for being on today.
Yep.
We're excited to have you, especially time zones aside.
Yeah.
But it's about 1:30 for us here in New York City, 8:30 for you over in Israel. For anyone listening, now they know the name, they know the background at Ericsson. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey into social media.
Sure. So I started my journey about 12 years ago. I was working for the nonprofit sector. That's where I kind of got my professional training. And I started working in basically managing programs and campaigns. And then that was when Facebook was actually the first question I had in my interview was, do you know what Facebook is and how we should use it? That was honestly the first question. And I said, I don't know everything about it yet, but I'm willing to learn. And I know it's going to be something huge. Those are honest answers. And so that was 12 years ago. And you can imagine what happened since then. And basically I did a lot of self-learning, a lot of training online. Then around that time, I started positioning myself as like the nonprofit social media expert because I really fit well with my skills and my personality, interacting with people, engaging with people, and still having the opportunity to engage with people, even though I was in Israel and they were, somewhere around the world. And then slowly people started coming to me. And after that, I created my own agency where we're working with clients from the startup that was working in the coffee shop to some very large tech companies, international companies. We were across 8 countries, meaning we had clients across 8 countries. I spoke at several large conferences like Social Bakers, Engage twice. I spoke a couple of conferences locally, brought a couple of conferences, and then I worked during that time, as well as afterwards, I was working for the City of Jerusalem's tourism division. So I was managing the social and all the new media coming out of that. We brought 2 blogger conferences there. Then I worked as a director of new media at a large volunteer organization here of volunteer medics, first responders. I'm a first responder myself, so I was managing the team as well as going out on calls. And then 6 months ago, started at Ericsson, also all because of Twitter, because of engaging people on Twitter. So yeah. And that's where I am.
That's awesome, man. And obviously that's how you and I, met as well on Twitter. Yeah. And, which brings us to, our next question is kind of a perfect segue. There's been a lot of conversation about how active should social media professionals be on social, and should it be a requirement, for them to be active, right? And obviously you have people who think, yes, you should be, and others who think that they don't need to be. What's your take on that, right? Obviously we see you're super active, right? And you're actually engaging in a Twitter chat right now, which is, one of my favorite things to do. So, but yeah, what's your take on that?
I actually think that I'll tell you my personal experience and also my opinion in general is that, any profession, it doesn't have to be only social media, but I think in this case, social media, the more you're involved in it and the more you understand that, that you have your finger on the pulse kind of thing, we were just talking before we started the conversation here. We were saying is who's on TikTok, who's on Instagram, who's on Twitter, your preferred platform. But, to really consume and to get to that consumer and that audience, you have to know that, you have to know the platform, you have to know the ins and outs, you have to really engage with it. You have to kind of know let's call it the vibe there, I guess that's the best word, I wouldn't start throwing, now Twitter's become much more popular. Started putting GIFs into tweets and things like that. That wasn't a thing in the beginning. Obviously that was because of the technology itself. But, I just saw the other day that Boris Johnson opened up a TikTok account and people were all saying, oh, so you all opened up a TikTok account, but they didn't really, his team forgot to, set up and, close the opportunity for his his first post to be, what's the word? I forgot. Was like they do like a side by side. I forgot what the term is exactly. See, I'm not very active on TikTok, but basically people were basically mimicking him. The fact he was trying to be cool. A duet. That's it. Thank you. He was trying to be cool by going out on TikTok, and then it went viral only because there were so many people doing duets about him and they're making fun of him and his thing. And it just shows that even though he was trying to do the right thing by being on the most, the forefront of social media, he did like the small things that were wrong. And that just shows that probably the person who said we should be on TikTok was not really active, because that would have been like a first thing to do. And so, for me, Twitter is my platform of choice. It used to be Facebook. Now, Instagram is kind of I'm moving towards Instagram a little bit more. I think that if you want to really be involved and engaged on social, you got to be pick your platform, pick 2 platforms, but you got to go all in and you got to do it and you got to know it so well that you can really, basically do it in your sleep, and really know about it. You don't have to know everything about the paid part of it, because paid is like a whole other, kettle of fish, but you got to know what it's like, what the conversations are like, the vibe, what's normal there, what's not, what's accepted, what's not. Don't just, reach out to random people and things like that. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
You mentioned something that's pretty interesting, right? Like, it's about picking where picking your channel and fully owning that, right? And going all in on that channel. And I look at that thought process and also relate that to brands who want to be on social, because I think you and I both know brands want to be everywhere. And then, a lot of the times what happens, they don't realize that they're in too many places. They're spread too thin. They don't have the resources to support it. And then now you have 6 or 7 active channels that are all very lackluster. Yep. What would you say is the reason why brands want to be everywhere? And maybe the same thing for, creators and influencers. Why is there a need and a thought that you need to be everywhere all the time on social?
First of all, great question, because that's and it actually really speaks to something that I had yesterday. I was in part of our teams conversations that we have. Yesterday, our social listening team presented every 2 years. Ericsson does this 2-year analysis of our competition on social, just completely organic, no paid work, just what are they doing, growth, some example of their posts. They take a snapshot of one day, what was the engagement on that post, etc. Just to see where we stand in relation to our competitors. And some of the things that we found like this, obviously it's very basic information, nothing like no secret back alley kind of dark, kind of things to do. And what we found is that some of the companies have 10, 15, 20, 30 LinkedIn accounts, each one for their, each area, market area, business area, whatever you want to call it, has their own LinkedIn account, Twitter account, Facebook account, whatever, and all of a sudden you're just like, you have hundreds of accounts that have to be managed. So my first question yesterday was, like you said, was why are they all doing it? Like, why are we all stretching so thin? So it could be that they, for purposes of targeting or for purposes of location, it might be easier for companies to do is like, okay, this is the business division of, I don't know, let's say England and then the Middle East and, North America or whatever it may be. So that might be one reason. The other reason is because of the story that they want to tell about that aspect of the brand. So if it's the handheld division of a phone company, they want to focus on the handheld phone, on the consumer, as opposed to, let's say, the underarching, like what we do at Ericsson is not necessarily about the phone. It's about the connection between phones and technology and everything else. So we don't want to necessarily talk about, to you, me, the regular customer. We want to talk about the value of what 5G and telecommunications can talk and do. So you want to kind of separate that out. That being said, we also made some sort of one of the conclusions that we came up with yesterday was that perhaps we should start closing down. Like we as Ericsson, we're saying that we should start closing down some of these accounts that are either dormant for whatever reason, or because they're just not being, we're not engaging the way we want to be. And so maybe we started doing this process when I started 6 months ago. This was already, kind of midstream. They were already saying is we got to start looking at and taking account of hundreds and hundreds of accounts that were supposedly active at one point, and start kind of consolidating, because it's too much on the team. There's a lot of work and oversight, and just auditing and making sure that everything's in order for all of these accounts is just too much. So that was our approach. Some approaches, other people and other companies are still spreading thin. I happen to think that at some point you're just so thin that it's hard to really manage it properly, and your team is so big. So it gets too difficult.
Yeah, you mentioned a word in that conversation, connection. And, going back to what Anthony said, how you're active today on this Twitter chat, one of the first commentaries you had, you said relationships in this business are what make a company successful. And you said that social media provides a glimpse into a person. I guess give us some context to
Sure.
the meaning of that post. And as much as social media could be detrimental, let's flip the switch. How is social media positive and make the world a better place?
Sure. So first of all, I always enjoy looking at things positively. Second of all, that was part of a Twitter chat. It's called Thulium Chats. It's run by Thulium, a large company that I'm familiar with. It's kind of like I don't even know how to describe Thulium exactly, properly. But anyways, a couple of colleagues of mine that are part of this chat, and my direct boss, Anita Vaselli, was actually the guest today. Not because I wasn't on there because of her, but definitely helped me be more convinced and more interested in being joining. But today's conversation was about social selling, and one of the first questions, and the way Twitter chats go, is that you have a series of questions kind of sprawled out across an hour or so, and people from around the world kind of just engage with it using that hashtag. And one of the questions was really basically what does it mean to be active on social? I forgot even the actual question, so that I'll give you the best. Here it is. So I'll give you the best, the best answer. But basically, the idea was that social media and using social media as a platform to engage with audiences around the world, and kind of what I mentioned earlier, it's an opportunity for me and for anyone to kind of make the world flat, and kind of all of a sudden you have an opportunity to engage with people, whether they're in New York, in China, in Canada, wherever it may be, and you have an opportunity to engage with them on like-minded conversations, maybe different opinions and things like that, and that gives you the chance to really kind of talk shop and really meet people that are, in your profession, or people that are outside of your profession that you might be interested in. And so the idea really is to, just like if you were to go into a bar, to go into a restaurant, the kind of, our party, you would want to meet and you want to kind of walk the room. You want to know the people are, so you want to get a sense of who they are. So you kind of did the right thing by taking one of my tweets and saying, finding out about who I am by giving what I said on Twitter. So same thing, you kind of understand who they are, you get a sense of who they are, and you start talking about, engaging with them on their conversation, and, add a little humor, add a little conversation, and that part of it starts, you're trying to break down the barriers, and you see how those things can be, can develop into something bigger. So I can tell you honestly, if you look through the tweets throughout, that time of the thing, you'll see that at the Twitter chat, you'll see that I mentioned that 90% of my business success throughout the last 12 years has been through Twitter. Like literally, clients, opportunities to be an influencer, my current job at Ericsson, my role at the City of Jerusalem, all has been through Twitter, and I have it all tracked and all monitored so I can prove it. So it really gives an opportunity to really show who people are, and gives you an opportunity to know who, to position yourself and to engage with people that might create some opportunities for you down the line. So yeah.
That's great, man. And then another thing that you were talking about, during this Twitter chat was the idea of social selling.
Yep.
And I believe you mentioned it a little bit before, but definitely want to expand on that, right? Because I think there's the thought that the second you hear the word selling, it automatically is associated with buying a product.
Yeah.
And I think your perspective on that is a little bit different. Would you mind jumping into that?
Sure. So, social selling in general is basically using social media and the social channels of a brand generally, but you could also apply it to, your own brand, because I believe that every person should have their own personal brand, and who they are represents what they believe in. And, I may 1 minute be sharing content about the Yankees. I know that we're all Yankee fans here. And then one other, a minute later, I'm sharing about something about, Israel, where I live, and then talking about social media. But the idea is that you're really getting like a whole picture, right? Because no one lives in a vacuum around their business, around their product. They live about, there's people behind that product, or people behind that brand, or a person behind that brand. And in order for you to really create the opportunity to really show them the product and show them the value, you need to be understanding who they are. So, to me, social selling it's modern day relationship building, right? In other words, active customers, whether it's the person who can sign off on a large, let's call it contract with a phone company, to the person who can authorize a computer to, at a company, or yourself who needs to buy a new product or whatever it may be. Where do you find, what's your first default? It used to be we used to, search on Google for our, what we get or what we're looking for. But nowadays, if you were, at least the way I would do things is if I'm interested in a product or a trip or whatever upcoming trip or some, insight, I'd ask Twitter or I'd look, ask my friends on Facebook or reach out to a couple of my friends on, Instagram or people that I know are travelers. And then I'd get a sense of who they are and reach out to people, or if I know there's a travel blogger that I'm looking for when I go traveling. So I'll search their content and see what insights they give me. And then I'll work backwards and then start Googling based on what they tell me and what information I need. So for me, social selling is really taking social media and using it as a platform to kind of build a better sense of who the person is, because you really get, instead of, it's not just the brand as like as a static environment, you're getting a sense of the people behind that brand and who they represent. And that's one of the things that we at Ericsson in general, I really believe in, that every person that says I work at whatever company or I represent a brand, they are ambassadors of that brand, and therefore they should be representing, whatever they say. Even if they have that caption that says, my opinions are my own, they do still in some way represent the brand, and they should be, taking that seriously and making sure that what they're saying is positive in some way. And even if it's a difficult time, we had that issue a couple of months ago with the in the insurgents in Russia. We have people in both sides of the spectrum. And we were telling people, you have to be careful of what you say, even if you're upset and whatever it is, because you represent the brand, and you don't just represent yourself here. You represent something greater than that. And therefore, social selling also gives opinions to your network. So to me, it's not just about what the brand says, it's what the people who work at the brand represent as well. So that to me is social selling. It's not, although that I have to be very careful. People have to understand that for me, it's not, and I really be very strongly, and I'm very anti those people who, as soon as they, reach out to you on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, start bombarding you with DMs and telling you their pitch right away. That's not it. You wouldn't want to do that in life, and you wouldn't want to do that on social media either. So yeah.
You said something that, literally just said it right now with the LinkedIn and the cold emails and selling, as soon as you make a connection. And I think that's another topic that has come up a lot, right? And I think it's directly related to this concept of social selling, and then also adding value, right? When you're trying to build relationships with people through social media. And there's a fine line between, hey, I believe I can bring you value, right? And then I'm just trying to sell you something. And I think over time that line has become even thinner because of maybe those that are not doing it properly, and those that are looking just for a one-sided, benefit of a new relationship they're trying to build. I won't sugarcoat it, right? Allie and myself, we're in the business of building relationships, new business for our agency here at CEG. So a lot of our effort is relationship building on LinkedIn, right? Relationship building across social, for the end goal of providing something of value to our prospective clients. But with that said, what do you feel is the key to showcasing what your value is and it not coming off as a selling or a pitch?
So, the way I view it, first of all, is being transparent about it from the beginning is great. And it's important to put that as your position and put that as your mission. So that way, when first of all, you're going to sense it yourself when you're kind of being too, kind of pushing yourself. That's the first thing. Like, you'll know that when you're kind of crossed that line for yourself, you say, I'm trying to increase my business, increase my network, so that way you get potential business. But you'll almost sense it by always an entrepreneur, but someone who used to own his own business knows that, you kind of sense when you're pushing too hard, and you kind of sense that feeling that you're going in too hard for the kill, for the sale. So for me, that's important to know that the mission is there and you're kind of in front of you, so that way you kind of keeps you kind of in some sort of frame. That's the first thing. Second of all, in terms of just, the idea of social selling and the idea of, encouraging people and showing the value, it doesn't mean that you have to say, okay, now buy my ebook, or now go buy my product, right? People will see that you're valuable because you're not selling, right? What makes people buy a car or makes people buy a product is because they saw someone talk about the product without saying is, hi, I'm promoting this right now, right? Like, the influencer that says every day they're promoting something else, even though they may have a huge audience, the question I always ask, and this is something that I discuss with other people all the time, is, the micro influencer who has less than, let's say, X thousands of followers is probably more valuable and more involved and engaged with their audience than the person who has 500,000 or 2 million or whatever it is, because that person has a lot more skin in the game, and B, really values each person that's talking to them and engages with them. And same thing here with social selling is you really want to be careful not to just keep on pushing your product, because you wouldn't do that on, you don't walk around every day saying, here's buy my product, buy my product. Those were the olden days when people used to do that. But nowadays, people, you want to kind of show them, the value, and you don't even talk about the product really. You just kind of show what's around the product that's important to them, right? Read most of the books about, selling. They'll tell you it's not about selling the product. It's about selling the value to what the person is saying to you and how do you influence that decision, and less about the car, the pen, the whatever it may be. So yeah, to me, that's the way when you want to drum a business to a business like yourself, like, I guess I'm a social business, social media agency, agency of that kind. You want to just do is continuously be out there, engaging with people, because opportunities will come up. And also you want to meet people in whatever capacity, whether it's social, whether it's at conferences or events, and you want to continuously create content that shows that you're knowledgeable of the space, knows that you can, create a report or create some sort of insights that are important. And then people, and also, meet with the people that you want to get to, your ideal customers, be in the same space as them. To me, at least my experience, it's always worked. And I've done in the past, and it's a little bit of a risky move, but done in the past, I used to go to people and say, they're always clients that, company X doesn't want to deal with because they're too small for them, but just right for me at this time. So I would say is, I'll be happy to take those people on if they call you or they reach out to you. If they're customers that, prospective clients that are too small for you or not in your scope. But, I'm still starting out. I'm still I have a little void right now, a little space. Be happy to take it from you, and I'll work with you on it. If they want to take your credit, or whatever it is, and it works, and that just builds your client base and also gives them the opportunity to see that you can provide them, do some good collaborations that way too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, man. And it's so refreshing to hear a lot of those things, because what myself and Ali preach all the time to our team, what we preach on our social and through our company social, is that at the end of the day, you have to bring value and you have to engage with your audience, whether you're a brand, whether you're a personal brand, or a company. You have to bring value back to the people that you want to be in your circle, right? And if you're just always asking and expecting a return without bringing that value to those people you want to connect with, then you're just another piece of noise within the social ecosystem, right? Like, and it's a matter of wanting to put in that effort. I think a lot of people are very lazy when it comes to social, and they're afraid to put in that work of social listening, social engaging, and developing those true relationships, like you said, and maintaining those relationships over time, because they want that quick, instant gratification, instead of knowing that, hey, if I put in this time now to build this relationship the right way with this individual, the long-term value of that relationship is going to be through the roof, right? Instead, I want to hit you with this quick sales email and pitch on contact number one. Now you're gone. Now there's no relationship, and you're back to square one. So I could not agree more. Yeah,
so that's exactly it. People think that social media in general is easy, and this is exactly what social selling is all about. The model of social selling is that it's not automation. There are parts that you can automate, right? And there are things that you can do, but some of that, the real, just like you wouldn't automate your engagements with people in real life, you don't want to automate everything in social media. You want to make sure that there's some components of it that are real, and there's humor, and there's, if someone's birthday, you're going to reach out and say happy birthday, and you're going to make a funny, whatever it is, or you're going to make a comment, like I was talking yesterday to one of the Buffer, social media team, and they were saying, I said, oh, I have a shirt from you. I happen to be wearing it today as a joke. I was telling them that. And I said, I'll wear my shirt. And they're like, and then I made a comment today about something else. And they're like, I take my hat off to you for, doing all that great achievement. And I'm like, luckily you didn't tell me to take off my shirt, because I was talking to them about the shirt that I was wearing, the buffer shirt. So like, you got to know that you have to be in that kind of mindset to know how to pick up those little pieces of information. That social selling, that you can kind of put those pieces together and kind of put it all, in that one place. There are points which can be automated, but a lot of the things need to be that personal touch that really, that make the value, and people really appreciate that component. And when you remember those things and you pick up on those things, that's what people will really, kind of come towards you and reach out to you for that experience in something, for that quote, for that podcast, for that blog, article, whatever it may be, for the speaking event, because they see that you have that, kind of knack for that component.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think if you look to build your business by leading with relationships, you'll reap the benefits. It may not look as if you're going to get them in the short term, but long-term business is where you want to be. And I do want to also segue into another topic that you really focus on your social activity, which is reverse engineering.
Yeah.
So if you're a social strategist or social media manager, digital marketing manager, how can you attribute this idea and this thought into the business that your company's doing?
Sure. The best example I can give is, like I mentioned earlier, I was the new media director at the City of Jerusalem Tourism. This is the best example because it really shows what we were trying to do. And when I started there, we identified, the opportunities that we have. At some point, we had close to 5 million tourists, which was like a record number for us coming to Israel. And Jerusalem was obviously one of the main centers, one of the main visiting sites of the country. So we kind of identified that. So we started doing is we identified what hashtags tourists in general use. So there's like a logic to it. So I'm going to start from there. What hashtags are tourists use when there's travel? So it could be travel, tourism, photography, whatever it is, Insta-tourist, whatever there may be. We started with that. Then we worked around and said, what Twitter chats happen or what conversations happen around these conversations. So we happened to be that at the time, every Tuesday, there was a conversation called Travel Talk on Twitter. So it was called TTOT. So we knew that on Tuesdays, we'd have to be part of that conversation because we wanted to make sure people positioning ourselves, Jerusalem, the city, as as a place that people should come to. Just like we want to be a leader on our personal brand. We want to position ourselves as a place that people want to be because we're active and we're engaging and things like that. So that was Tuesdays. So we knew that on Tuesdays we had to create content that was related to the topic of that week's Twitter conversation. So that was Tuesdays. And then Thursdays, there's always this thing called Throwback Thursdays, right? So we TBTs. So we said, let's take a historical monument in Jerusalem or a historical place in Jerusalem and kind of position itself, what it looked like in the olden days and what it looked like today. What does it look like today? So we had Tuesdays and Thursdays anchored based on these hashtags. And then we started seeing what people talk about in other places. So there was food. And we said, well, food people like to talk about on the weekend. So on Fridays, we would share content about food and restaurants and the scene and the culture around that. So we had Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. All of a sudden you have them, literally based on hashtags. And then what we just did is we engineered our entire content funnel based on those 3 days. And then we just said, okay, Sundays is a little less engagement because people outside of Israel are engaging less on Sunday. But then we actually challenged that and we found out that they engage more on Sundays because they're kind of bored and kind of like, doing not working. So we use that as something. And all of a sudden you have like these anchors of conversations to frame your content strategy. So we literally did that. And from there, we worked our entire content engine that we created was based on that. That was one component of it. The next component, which was really cool also, is because we knew that tourists go to certain spots in Jerusalem, we bought a platform that is, there's nothing better, no better way to describe it than Big Brother, but basically it would geo-target basically, it would create geo fences around areas that we identified based on Google's technology. And basically, we knew that these were the hot zones where people were always traveling. So in Jerusalem, there's the Western Wall, there's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and kind of the old city. So we created a geo fence around that. So any content that came up through there in that place, in that area, it was aggregated to this platform. And then that we then were able to identify, were they influencers, travel bloggers, just regular people, how much time they spent in those areas, etc. And then we started doing is we sent the material either to restaurants if they were foodies, travel bloggers, we sent them to hotels or to other people. We sent the information of these bloggers or these people to via this information that we were getting as a city. We were becoming a resource of information of people that were in real time engaging with the city and used it. So it was kind of like we took the content, we had a funnel, and we also had the people in real time also doing this cool, really, kind of high tech stuff. So yeah, that's how we reverse engineered our entire content. So that's like a very big version of it. Same thing we're doing, in general is like, that's the way I start always. My content is what conversations are happening. I use Twitter. I use hashtags just like keywords. I view them the same. What people are talking about them, they use them, and we can understand what words are used and what words are not. That's the way I do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great example. And to anyone listening, quick side note, you should definitely go travel, go to Israel, see all the amazing spots, and, utilize Mordecai's reverse engineering to find out where it is you should go. But I we can't wrap this up without mentioning that you yourself are a podcast host, I believe, to a show called Empathize It, which empathy, it's such a huge word. And you did say something on Twitter as well. It's a show that aims to put empathy back into a world that's now driven by selfies and social media. And so to extract that and, again, create a positive mindset, what is the most valuable lesson that you've been able to learn from some of the guests that you've had on your own show?
So the first thing first of all, to be totally transparent, that podcast has been like dormant a little bit for almost a year and a half, 2 years, just because of the time and my, things that have come up, responsibilities. I really want to get back onto it because I enjoyed it. I viewed it as my, right before when I started, I really viewed it as I can't afford all these tickets to conferences, especially with all the travel back and forth. So I said, I viewed this as my version of a conference. I would reach out to the experts in the field and the people that I know and I engage with on a daily or somewhat, regular basis, and reach out and offer them the opportunity to host, be a guest on my podcast, and then talk to them about something that they love talking about. And for me, it was just like a way to learn and an opportunity to kind of create great content, and to speak to these people that we talk to anyways. But the truth is, one of the main lessons is that so much of the conversation often around business, around generating business, is not about I call the softer skills. Every person that I spoke to across the board, whether it was a startup, whether it was someone who worked in social media, whether it was someone who's an entrepreneur for a year, for 10 years, they all mentioned that, it's that person, that human to human skill that really is the differentiator, and like that really the value add that makes every other business, stand. What's that one differentiator, that unique selling proposition? It's the person behind the business. What's that value? What's the soft skill there? And everything else comes after that. If you trust a person, they're passionate about it, they drive it with a real human aspect, everything else, there's that component allows everything else to happen. And unfortunately, when we go to school or go to college or university or MBA, they don't talk about that. They talk about, numbers, metrics, which are important. I'm not denying it, right? Metrics, kind of like the boardroom, you kind of sit there, you're stale, dry, the olden days. And nowadays you start seeing people who are not only talking about that, but they're talking about that, that interaction, that face-to-face, the smile, I saw you at this place, I remember that. And if they start making those connections, and all of a sudden that component takes the forefront, and it really becomes, and you understand people in a different level, and that really kind of close things up a little bit. That's really, again, the same thing with social selling, is you learn that, and then you use that information in a valuable way to kind of add value to their conversation and how they can help, or how you can help each other. And then by doing that, you have, the 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, but equals 3. And then you've created something much greater than just that conversation. So yeah, that's what I've got.
Amazing, man. I think, we've we've gone through so much, right? You look at the concept of social selling, bringing value, engaging with your audience, just understanding, all the elements that are part of being a professional within social. So as we do with every guest that comes on the show so far, what is the realest piece of advice that you have for someone that's currently in social or thinking about starting a career in the industry?
So for me, I think I'll tell you exactly what I said about 2.5 hours ago. And during this Twitter chat was one of the conversations was, what are the lessons that we can have for, social media, or what are the kind of, what can we do? And I think to me, it's, listen, learn, laugh, engage, create, and consume, right? So listen to a lot of people, watch the platform, learn what the vibe is, like we said in the beginning. Laugh, because a lot of it you have to just be willing to make mistakes, be willing to to smile and say I didn't know that, or it's funny, or it's not funny, but laugh about things, because it's in general it's always positive attitude. Engage, don't be afraid to reach out to someone. Worst comes to worst, let's like at a business pitch, they'll say no, or they'll say not right now, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be a yes down the line. Create. If you're going to be on a platform, you got to be able to create content, not just consume it, and not just be one of those weird kind of people in the background. And consume it, meaning like you want to learn from what they're doing. You want to consume a lot of it, spend time consuming it, not just listening, but also consuming it and internalizing. Are there things that, across the platform that people are interested in? If anyone in social media, even if you're beginning, there's opportunities. Don't be scared to ask. Anyone who, most of the time they don't bite. I don't think anyone, that would be kind of cool, but if they did, but in general, like people they're not, especially, we're kind of a friend of mine who, was like one earlier ambassador of digital in general used to say, there's no, what do you say? Oh, there was no hatred in the cloud, right? Now, he was trying to say that people all of a sudden we kind of break down those barriers, and especially on social, we have that opportunity to really kind of interact with each other in a real way. So be comfortable with that and be willing to do it. And don't be scared to, engage and reach out, and people will often say yes. And like I said, I would say 90% of the business that I'm in and my success has been because of social media and because of just being consistent. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great, man. And you heard it here first. Social media is extremely valuable. We're all worth every single dollar we get paid. So don't get that mixed up. And I think those 6 things that you mentioned, listen, learn, laugh, engage, create, consume, you can take those 6 things and build yourself an amazing career in social. So make sure you guys write that down, store that, and save it. Mordecai, where can everyone find you on social?
I'm across the board, except for TikTok, I have to be honest. But Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, I'm active on all of them. And you can find me. Basically, I'll pretty much respond at any time of day. And I'm happy to reach out. I'm happy to listen. I'm happy to help out if I can. And yeah, looking forward. My name is Mordecai Holtz, and I think my handle is Mordecai Holtz across all of them. So yeah. Should be pretty easy to find. I'm pretty much the only one available on that with that name. So,
got it. Cool, dude. So, listen, thank you so much for joining the show, and as we say with everybody, thank you for talking that talk with us.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.